is your no bullshit guide to a happier life. Quick, but not necessarily easy tips to help you to squeeze every last drop of enjoyment out of your business and your life. My name is Helen Calvert. I'm a coach, a business owner and a parent, and I'm so happy to be here with you. I do swear occasionally, as the title suggests, so pop in your headphones if I'm not safe for little ears. Ready to go? Let's do this. Do you wish that you had a place where all of the nuggets of wisdom from this podcast were saved and easy to access? Somewhere you could access me and ask me questions and spend time with me without committing to coaching one-to-one. Somewhere that inspires you, gives you confidence, improves your emotional safety, and makes you feel as though you belong. Somewhere you can find the answers. I've got you. The Happier Life Hub is now open and it is ready for you to join. The Hub is a connected, supportive community available no matter where you are in the world. It is constantly updated with video, written and audio content that is organised in themes so you can find the answers to how you are feeling today. You don't have to be sociable, but you can be. You can dip in and out or be in there every day. You will find life coaching first aid you can access in the moment and more in-depth resources for when you are ready to learn and grow. Come on a journey of self-discovery that will threaten the mediocrity. The world is set up in a way that is unhelpful to most people. We constantly receive messaging that keeps us small and helpful to the system. As a result, we are exhausted, stressed, and burned out. The Happier Life Hub will help you to find out as much as you can about who you are, how you truly thrive, then find ways to live that support that and make you more helpful to yourself. As an individual, you will feel fulfilled and content. As a collective, we can create our own system and live harmoniously. And you can have all of this for the early bird price of just £12 a month. Sign up before the 1st of June 2025 and you will get the early bird price for a full 12 months. Head to happier-life.co.uk/hub or sign up via the link in the show notes for this episode. The Happier Life Hub, the place where you find the answers to banishing the bullshit and living a happier life. Hello, and welcome to this episode where we're going to be talking about the autistic lens, seeing everything through the lens of autism. I think this is probably a fairly common phrasing, but I know it from the fabulous Leanne Maskell, who is an ADHD coach, and she talks about the autistic lens. I feel like that might be the first place I heard it, but regardless, it is a good phrase. And what it means is that firstly, we see the world through the lens of autism if we are autistic. We all see the world through all kinds of different lenses. I also want to talk about the fact that when we realise that we are autistic or neurodivergent, we start seeing it everywhere. And that can be a bit challenging for other people because it can seem as though suddenly we're like, they're autistic and I think they have ADHD and I think they're neurodivergent and I've realised this, that and the other. And it's a very common experience with someone who is late diagnosed. So before I knew I was autistic, I was still experiencing everything through the lens of being autistic because autism is something you have. It's not something you develop. And I just had different labels for what I was experiencing, different levels of understanding, definitely different levels of guilt over who I was and how I was behaving because I didn't have the information. And it's one of the things about realizing that you have a particular brain type is that you're able to forgive a huge amount of things about yourself that you had been carrying massive guilt and shame for. So it is huge. And it's something that I think gets bigger. So you start off realizing that you're neurodivergent and you think, oh, that explains a lot. And then you realize actually it explains absolutely everything. And that is why you start talking about it all the time, because it explains this and it explains that. And that's why I couldn't do this. And that's why I experienced this in my job and in my relationships and in my friendships and in the supermarket. And it explains everything. And it's very exciting. Now, the thing about autism, and this is where we veer slightly into science, which is not my area of expertise. So I believe, or studies have shown, or research suggests, that people with autism have a difference in their synapses. Don't ask me what a synapse is. Well, to be fair, AI tells me that synapses are the connections between neurons or neurons. I have no idea. This is, like I say, this is not my area. The point is that autistic people's brains are literally different in the way they are structured. So, this is a big deal. It's not surprising that the autistic lens becomes all encompassing. Imagine having a physical disability, but not knowing that you had it. So just not being able to do the same things as other people, or doing things but doing them badly, or just simply not being able to do them but not having a clue why, and nobody else having a clue why, and everybody kind of deciding, including yourself, that you're just a bit shit. And then you realize you have this physical disability. Oh my goodness, of course. Now, in that instance, because we are used to physical disabilities being things we can see, which of course they're not all. But in that instance, you might imagine people rallying round and, oh my goodness, how could we not realise? And you need this and you need that. And of course, we will support you. It's very different with something that can't be seen, which autism isn't something that is visual as such. But that's the experience. You suddenly realise, and hopefully everyone around you realises, although people do tend to be resistant, but that's maybe a whole other discussion. But you suddenly realise why everything has been the way it has been. And it is enormous. And it's often something that's to be celebrated because you haven't changed. So it's not like you've suddenly been given a load of challenges. You've always had the challenges. So the realization there's a reason for them is a cause for celebration. It's also a cause for grief because you grieve for your past self who was so misunderstood and so full of guilt and shame. But this is true of anything we realize about ourselves. So you may not be autistic, but perhaps you've realized something about your sexuality or about your family history, or it could be anything. But that will be the lens through which you see everything for a little while because you're reprocessing your experiences with this new information. So it's something that everybody does when they discover something new. I think it's probably also more prevalent in neurodivergent people because we often have what are termed special interests, things we become super focused on and super interested in. And when you've just been diagnosed or self-diagnosed, your neurodivergence tends to become your special interest. So there's probably even more focus on it if it's that. But anything we learn is something that we start seeing the whole of life in that way. But it's also important to remember that I've said this before in all kinds of different talks and content, but we're all a mosaic of different pieces. So we're not just autistic, we're not just ADHD, we're not just a certain race or culture or background. Every single one of us is a unique jigsaw of all kinds of pieces. So just because you've discovered you're autistic doesn't mean you're the same as everyone else who's autistic. You might be gay, you might have discovered you've got a cultural background you never knew about, but you're not just those things, and you don't suddenly become exactly the same as everyone else who has that piece of the jigsaw. We're all a unique mosaic. It's just that sometimes particular pieces of that mosaic feel like they need a big light shone on them by us. We want the light to be shone on them, and we want everyone else to see that piece very clearly, because it becomes hugely important to us whilst we're examining it. And it does mean that we often do start seeing it everywhere because, well, for a start, if you're autistic, you are a pattern recognizer. So it's probably even easier for you to recognize other autistic people. Also, we all want to belong, so we will be seeking our people. And when we're focused on something, we're generally going to see more of it. So you do start seeing it everywhere, or imagining that you're seeing it everywhere. And it's not appropriate to go around saying to everybody, well, of course, I've realised you have this and you have that, and diagnosing everyone. We might do that in the privacy of our own heads, but we do start to see it everywhere, and we start to see things from that perspective. So if you've just learned about the impact of trauma, you might start seeing everyone's behaviour with a question mark in your own head of, is that has that been caused by trauma? Is that informed by their trauma? If you've just learned about, when we're younger and we learn about different cultures and different religions, oh, that's why so-and-so does this. Oh, that's why so-and-so does that. It becomes what we see as the reason for so many different things. An example of this, and I'm just interested to know what people think about this one, because something that I see called out a huge amount on social media due to the people I follow and the media waters I swim in, is the phenomenon of mansplaining, which is when a man will explain something to a woman in a very patronising way with the assumption that he knows way more about it than she does, even if, and especially if, she is actually an expert in that subject. Now, I don't particularly want to get into all of that right now because it's a whole gender thing. It's a whole thing. But I do just want to throw out there that one of the kind of phrases that is often mocked as being a classic example of someone about to mansplain is, well, actually. Now, the problem there is that is also a phrase that if somebody says, well, actually, to me, I think, oh, you're autistic and you're about to info dump on me. So I'm just curious as to how many people who have been mansplaining are actually autistic. And the reason it tends to be men rather than women is because women with autism still have female drivers for socialization and belonging that mean that they mask harder than their male counterparts. Because in my head, I've often thought, well, actually, and really wanted to explain something properly to someone, but I've stopped myself because I know it's not socially acceptable. So that's just one example of maybe where we can throw a little compassion out there into the world, just a little. I'm not saying that any kind of brain type excuses bad behaviour. It doesn't, but it may explain certain types of behaviour. Can we start seeing autism where perhaps in the past we've seen asshole? I'm just asking. I'm just putting it out there into the world. And this is just one very small example of what I mean by we start seeing everything through the autistic lens. There are famous people who do things and I'll think, I wonder, I think maybe they've got ADHD, maybe they've got... My friend and I have a great time diagnosing Formula One drivers with all kinds of different brain types because that's another special interest of ours. We love a bit of Formula One and we're convinced we know what brain type all of the drivers are. It's actually none of our business and we haven't got any information or any medical background, but it's fun and it's something that we see. And I would imagine that if you have newly discovered something about your sexuality, you probably start thinking, well, I bet that person has this. I bet that person likes that. I bet that person secretly X, Y, and Z. So it's just how we tend to see the world. But I am seeing everything through the autistic lens at the moment. And I think it's important to see everyone through our new and exciting lenses because it helps us to make sense of the world, especially if we're autistic, because we like to find patterns to help us make sense of the world. But it's also really important to think about the lenses through which other people are viewing the world. So if you're very excited to say, guess what, I've learned all this about neurodivergence and I now realise blah, 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 info dump, what is the person that you're talking to, what lenses are they seeing the world through? And how can you show an interest and compassion for that? And how can you learn from them other things about the world and the way people behave? And crucially, are we sometimes talking to people who have a lens that is so different from ours, that is almost opposed to ours, that no matter how hard we try, we can't actually see the world the same way? Because when we realize that, we realize that the path to understanding is not through more information. It could be through figuring out how to swap glasses and wear their lens for a while and for them to wear yours. So that's something else to think about. But what is the key piece of someone else's mosaic that they want to shine a light on? What is it that someone else wants you to know about their experience of life? Because owning our own story is something that is a hugely important value of mine. And part of that is being able to say, this is the piece of my mosaic that I want you all to focus on. Right now, I want you all to see this about me. And I would feel so grateful if you could shine a light on this piece of me alongside me so we can explore it together. And can we do that for each other? So, consider the lens you're seeing the world through. Be compassionate to those who have just found a new and exciting lens and want to see everything that way. And can we maybe swap glasses with people sometimes and find ways to see things through each other's lenses? And while we're doing all of that, of course, we have to be excessively kind to ourselves. And that way we can squeeze every last drop of enjoyment out of this crazy thing that is life. See you next time. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to find out how to work with me or how to get your hands on a copy of my book, you can find all of those links in the info for this episode. My huge thanks to Stephanie Ward of the Spicy Brain Collective for sponsoring the whole of this season of the No Bullshit Guide to a Happier Life. You can also find out more about Steph's collective for neurodivergent business owners via the links in the episode info. See you next time.